Jesus says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me. Oh, that's heavy. He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoner, recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free. You know, I don't know if you know this or not, but I've learned something. My friend in the room somewhere, Wade Landers, taught me this. Did you know that sometimes in the missions community there can be some differing ideas on methodologies? Are y'all aware of that? Okay, all right, you get that. I would imagine if I had to stand up here tonight and get us to come to a point of unity on what the word poor means, I think it might be difficult, you know? If we had to land on who's a prisoner, who's not, it might be a little hard. I would guess that if we were to spend some time tonight trying to camp out and figure out, okay, what does recovery of sight for the blind really mean? Is that the physically blind? Is that the spiritually blind? Like trying to find agreement, alignment, and then even trying to figure out what does it mean oppressed? We would have a hard time finding alignment. Agreed? It better be tough, wouldn't it? But I can tell you what would not be tough, and I think we could probably find alignment rather quickly. That when you want to reach hurting people, you're going to have to be willing to go into hard places. Is that true? We want to reach hurting people, we're going to have to go into hard places. And I can tell you sometimes, even for us, that requires us to do hard things. It requires us to go into hard places, to walk in places, to be with people when it's difficult. I was thinking of my own life, man. Like, Jason, where have you ever been that was hard? And embarrassingly enough, a ministry thing did not come to mind first. That's a crazy thing. It actually was a trip I took to Alaska, of all things. And I'm a little embarrassed that this was the first thing that came to mind, but it is. I am an outdoorsman. When Jesus withdraws to solitary places to pray, that is my, that's where I connect with the Father. And sometimes I do that alone, sometimes I do that in community. One of the trips that I did to Alaska was a hunting trip. If your culture doesn't do that, I understand. We do a lot of that here. But I went on a hunting trip to Alaska with some friends. We drove 17 hours north out of the city of Anchorage. If you're familiar with the United States, Alaska is by far our largest state. We drive 17 hours clear up to the Arctic Circle and area close to the Bering Sea. And we're going to be hunting this animal called a caribou. And when you get out of the car, you've got to walk 5 miles from the highway on foot through this stuff called Arctic tundra. 5 miles through the wilderness until you finally get to the point where you can actually hunt. And my friends had told me this would be difficult. They told me it would be hard, and I sorely underestimated their version of hard and my version of hard. Because what happens is you throw in a backpack that weighs about 50-some pounds, put your boots on, you begin walking, and I don't need to go into the finer details of Arctic tundra, but I feel like you need to understand enough about it that it grows in columns about knee-high, and if you try to stand on top of it, it collapses and falls over. And so every time, everywhere you go, you've got to step up and over, and then when your boot goes down into the ground, it's just tundra. It's just marshy stuff. It's thick, it's wet. It grabs a hold of your foot. It's permafrost. And so every step, you get the suction on your foot, and then you got to lift your leg up. You got to keep going. And we got to do that for 5 miles. I get a half mile in, and I feel this hot spot on the back of my heel from my boot. And I realize I'm getting a blister. So I asked my friends, hey guys, can I stop for a second? Like, yeah. So we collapse there in the tundra, and I pull stuff out and put something, a little thing on my foot to kind of help it, keep from getting worse. We walk another half mile, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm getting a hot spot on my other foot. And they're like, French, come on, let's go. Like, sorry guys. So we fall down in the tundra, I do, and I get stuff out of my backpack, take my boot off, my sock off, put another patch on this foot, and we walk about another half mile. We got 5 miles to go. We're now a mile and a half in. I said, hey guys, I was walking and it actually pulled the patch off of my foot. And they're like, Jason, we cannot do this all day. And I'm like, I'm sorry guys, I'm really embarrassed, So they're like, okay. So I finally put another patch on, and I willed myself in that moment. I will not ask them again. I will not. So we walked. And it pulled both patches off both heels, and we walked. And I mean, I don't know personally that I'd ever had any more acute pain than in that moment. It hurt so bad. Every mile we walked was just horrible. We finally get to this point 5 miles in. After walking, we set up a camp. We get our tent all set up, and we're going to sit down and just kind of rest. And I go in the tent alone, and I just need a moment to gather my thoughts. And I take my boots off, and I unlace them. And I look inside, and I look at my heel, and it's just completely red. All the skin is gone. My heel's bleeding. Take off my other boot. Skin's all off of my heel, and I realize I am in trouble. I remember just sitting there looking at myself going, man, my feet are nasty. Like, it is bad, man. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I don't know why. This scripture came to mind. I don't know why it came to mind. I'm sitting alone in this tent. I'm looking at blisters on my heels. You know, they're bleeding. They're all messed up. I know I've got to walk 5 miles out plus the rest of the trip. And I'm like, my feet look disgusting. They're bad. And I thought of the scripture that Paul writes when he says, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. That came to mind. Sit in the tent. That's the verse that comes to mind. And I thought, man, like at first I thought, well, Jesus, did your feet, I'm not going to finish that question. Yeah, your feet probably did hurt. Yeah, I know of a very specific time they hurt. What about you, Paul? Like, what made you write that? Like, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news? Why did he write that? And I'm sitting there thinking about it, and all of a sudden, around a couple of Nalgene bottles, I always take duct tape. And so I just pulled duct tape off. I did the only thing I knew how to do, and I just started wrapping my ankles. I wrapped them basically like a trainer would for basketball or soccer or football, whatever you play. And I just wrapped my ankles up. And in that moment, I knew, man, this is the only way I'm going to get through it, is I got to wrap them up, and I got to keep walking even when it hurts. And I'm sitting there in the tent as I'm wrapping my ankles up, and I'm thinking, man, Paul, when you wrote that, did you ever hurt, Paul? Like, was it ever hard for you? And my mind just started kind of going through different times when Paul would have had to keep walking when it hurt. When carrying hope for Paul meant he had to be willing to continue even in the midst of pain. And it starts right out of the gate. I mean, from the very beginning, Paul finds opposition and hardship. I mean, he's from the beginning, he's blind, he doesn't eat or drink for 3 days. And then Jesus has Ananias tell him, hey, Paul, can you communicate to Paul that he's going to suffer many, many hardships for my name? I'm thinking, if we think about the life of Paul, that's a man who is willing to bring hope when it hurts. No matter what it was, Paul was willing to persevere in the midst of difficulty, in the midst of pain, and he would push through to take hope forward when it hurt. I mean, he starts his ministry, and there's no doubt what happens in Paul's life. I mean, we know the story. Whether you want to look at the very beginning when he goes to Damascus and they chase him right out of town. You remember that story? That's a man who's willing to carry hope when it hurts. He didn't just do that in Damascus. You remember when he goes to Jerusalem and they run him out of town there? He's a man who's willing to carry hope when it hurts. What about that time? Remember that time that he went to Antioch? He went to Antioch and they chased him out of town because he was willing to carry hope when it hurts. Not just Antioch. Remember Iconium? He shows up at Iconium, man. He starts preaching there. And there's a plot to stone him. And they run him out of town in Iconium as well. Paul was willing to bring hope even when it hurt. Willing to take hope forward no matter the cost. Well, he leaves Iconium, he goes on to Lystra, and we know how that story plays out. He gets to Lystra, and do you realize what happens when he gets to Lystra? The guys from Antioch and the guys from Iconium walk 120 miles so they can find Paul in Lystra, so they can stone him there, and stone him they do, and they leave him for dead. His blood in the dirt. Church thinking it's over. And at that moment, the disciples come around him in the dirt. They pick him up. And that old man ain't dead, is he? He's tough as nails now. He's not done. In fact, what's Paul do? He gets up the next day and walks 50 miles to the mountains to Derbe to preach. Because Paul's a man who's willing to keep going and take hope even when it hurts. He will not quit. He'll preach there. And then when he's done, I think Paul recalls about 3 sermons he didn't get to finish. So what does he do? He does a 180 and he leaves Derbe and he goes back and he preaches in Lystra and then he preaches in Iconium and then he preaches in Antioch, because Paul is a man who's willing to bring hope even when it hurts. He won't stop. He won't give up. He'll push on and he'll push forward. You remember what he told them as he's sitting there trying to strengthen the disciples, encouraging them? What he says? He says, we're going to go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of heaven. Man. And notice what he says. He says we, not he. Because Paul was a man who was willing to walk, willing to bring hope, even when it hurt. Well, he leaves there. We know what happens. I mean, Paul goes right out of the frying pan into the fire at some point. He gets into Philippi. We know that story, man. They beat him with rods. throw him in jail after he's been flogged. The Lord rescues him from that moment. He gets out of Philippi, and from there we're gonna find out that he's got a mob that's after him, trying to take him out. Eventually we'll find him in Thessalonica, and what happens there? They run him out of Thessalonica too. I mean, everywhere he goes, someone's pursuing him, someone's after him, but he will not stop in order to bring hope. He's willing to bring hope even when it hurts. He will not back down. He'll go to Berea at some point. And the Thessalonians that just ran him out of town, they'll walk 50 miles so they can drive him out of Berea as well. I mean, this is a man who understands opposition. He's a man who understands pain. He's a man who understands, I've got to keep going. I've got to bring hope even when it hurts. He'll end up in Corinth at some point. And I love this because he gets in Corinth and he starts preaching. At the very beginning, he gets abused. And it's not funny. It's just amazing the way this story plays out. He's abused right there in the synagogue. He's trying to preach. They run him out. And what does Paul do? I mean, most of us, if we got ran out of preaching, we'd probably leave town. Not Paul. He literally goes next door and he keeps on preaching. You ain't going to stop that old man. He is not going to back down. So he preaches next door. And the crazy thing is, I don't know how loud he preached, but I know he preached convincingly. Because the very synagogue leader that kicked him out, Crispus, Paul converts him. So they appoint a new synagogue leader, Sosthenes. They appoint Sosthenes, and Sosthenes, he tries to get Paul in trouble. I think Sosthenes thinks, man, we got him this time. And he's like, we're going to put together this trial, and I'm going to take care of this Paul guy once and for all. And we can't get a conviction on him, man. Sosthenes can't get a conviction, so they brutally beat Sosthenes. Paul's not done. They beat the new synagogue leader, and he's still not done. You know why? Because what does it say in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 1? Paul, called to be an apostle, greetings. And also Sosthenes, our brother. He's a man who's willing, in the midst of opposition, to keep moving forward. He will not quit. Whether he's in Ephesus, and they want to publicly malign him, and they want to fill a whole stadium with a mob, most of us would run for our lives, but not Paul. Paul says, let me at it, man. Let me in there. I'm not willing to quit. I'm not willing to walk away. I'm going to give this hope, and I'll pursue it even when it hurts. The believers in that area are like, no, Paul, that's probably not a great idea. He'll leave Ephesus, and at some point, I mean, you guys know the story of how things play out after Ephesus, the mob, all that kind of stuff. But Paul won't quit. He won't quit. He'll find himself eventually going through that whole empire through Macedonia. We know eventually there's a whole group of Greeks that try to kill him before we can get on that boat for Syria. Everywhere he goes, he faces opposition. Everywhere he goes, he faces pain. Every time you turn around, Paul's willing to keep moving forward. He'll keep walking. He'll keep bringing hope, even when it hurts. And Jesus meets him that day, and he says, Paul, I got news for you. I want to let you know what's coming, Paul. The Spirit's going to compel you, and you're going to go to Jerusalem. And I'm sure Paul's like, oh, man, I already been there. That didn't go so well. Last time I was in, they had a hit squad try to take me out. The Spirit's compelled me, and Paul says, man, I know what's going to face me there. Every city I go through, there's nothing but prison and hardship for me. And so he does it. He heads to Jerusalem in obedience. I mean, what happens as soon as he gets there? You know the story. He's got the centurion and the Sanhedrin that are after him. They want to kill him, man. They want to put him on trial. They want to take him out. And Paul just won't quit. But truthfully, I think Paul had to feel just a little bit of trepidation in his soul. I think it's why it says, the scripture says that literally Jesus stood near him. Jesus was near him in that moment. And what did he tell Paul? Take courage. Take courage. Paul, as you've testified about me in Jerusalem, you're also going to Rome. And Paul had to just grab his knees like, Rome? How am I going to get to Rome? And Jesus is like, I got an idea. I got an idea. Might not like it, Paul, but I got an idea. You see, there's this elite group of Jewish men, and they're not gonna eat or drink. They're gonna take a vow of no food, no water until they kill you. Oh, okay. And what's gonna end up happening, Paul, is because there's a plot on your life that they're gonna have to rally about 470 elite forces of Rome to move you from Jerusalem to Caesarea Philippi. Oh, gotcha. I mean, if you're thinking these guys that want to kill him in Jerusalem are no big deal, then why did they mobilize 400 plus soldiers of Rome just to get him out of Jerusalem? Paul's a man who's willing to stare opposition in the face and say, hope matters. I'll carry it even when it hurts. And we know how the rest of this mess plays out. He'll have this garbage time with Felix. Good night. He won't pay the bribe. He won't pay the money. It's 2 years in jail. We know what happens with Festus. Paul's almost at a point where he can get out of this. And I think Paul looks at it as like, no, I can't get out of this. I'm supposed to go to Rome. So Paul plays the ace card, like, I appeal to Caesar. Like, you doing what? That's a death sentence. Paul's like, Jesus told me that's where I'm going. So it's before Festus. It's before Agrippa. And about the time they put him on a boat, and you're thinking, man, maybe Paul's going to get going some sort of like, cruise or something like that through the Mediterranean. No, he's shipwrecked, for crying out loud. And if that's not enough, he gets bit by a viper. This guy cannot catch a break at all. Every time we turn around, Paul is facing hardship. But he won't quit, will he? He just won't give up. He's willing to walk, willing to carry hope, even when it hurts. He'll spend 2 years in house arrest. At some point, he's going to find himself in that Mamertine prison. If you've never been to Rome and seen that prison, it may be a tourist attraction now, but it wasn't then. You came out of that prison typically in one of two ways. Either you're dead or you were going to be. And at that moment, willing to walk when it hurts, willing to carry hope when it hurts, Paul writes this to Timothy. Man, I think out of respect for who he is, I'm going to ask a favor right now. And I want Paul to speak directly to you. This is a man who endured much hardship, much difficulty. And I think if he could have a moment on this stage to have a conversation with you, I think he might tell you the very same thing that he told Timothy. Out of respect for one of the toughest old men who ever lived on the planet, could we rise and listen to the words of Paul to give him respect for who he is and what he did? I believe this is what Paul would say directly to your heart. So I want you to listen to this as if he is speaking these words directly to you. In the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who will judge the living and the dead, and in view of his appearing kingdom, I give you this charge. Preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and careful instruction, for the time will come when men will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they'll gather around the great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They'll turn their ears away from the truth and aside to the myths. But you keep your head in all situations. Endure hardship. Do the work of an evangelist. Discharge all the duties of your ministry, for I'm already being poured out like a drink offering. The time of my departure. I've fought the good fight, I've finished the race, I've kept the faith. Now there's in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award not only to me, but to all who long for his appearing. You can sit back down. If Paul could walk in here right now, make his way down the aisle, and I don't mean this disrespectfully at Paul. That is not my intent right now. But I'd like a little bit of latitude and a little bit of freedom to describe this. If Paul were to walk in here right now, let's just say he was wearing a pair of athletic shorts, gym shorts, and he had a robe on, and he were to walk down here and stand in front of us. And I could respectfully ask him in that moment, Paul, would you be willing to take that robe off in front of us? And I don't want to embarrass you, Paul, but I know you got a pair of shorts on. Would you be willing to take that robe off for just a second? We just want to see what you went through. I think we'd be blown away. I think we'd look at him and we would see that scar right across his face. And we'd say, man, Paul, what happened there? And he's like, oh, man, that big old boy in Lister hit me right hard, man. That rock cracked me right open, man. Paul, why you walk all crooked? Man, those rods in Philippi, they beat my back, and then they put me in shackles in that jail. My back has never been right. It's never been right since. Paul, you got a gash across your back. You're like, yep, that was that one night. We got shipwrecked. I was in the sea, and all of a sudden this board came along across the way. It just went right across the back, cut me wide open. But you know the good news is it cut me open. I was able to grab a hold of that, and I was able to hold on, man. And when you look at his life and you think about what he went through, listen to what he says. He says, I've worked much harder, been in prison much more frequently, been flogged more severely, been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews 40 lashes, minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move. I've been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my own countrymen, in danger from the Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, in danger from false brothers. I've labored, I've toiled, I've often gone without sleep. I've known hunger and thirst, have gone without food. I've been cold, I've been naked. And besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for the churches. We come from a line of men and women who don't quit. We come from a line of people who can walk and move forward and bring hope even when it hurts. Let me ask you a question. Did the Lord give you a spirit of timidity? Did he give you a spirit of timidity? Then church, where's it coming from? What have happened to the men and women of courage who are willing to bring hope even when it hurts? Do you know about your family tree? Do you know the bloodline you come from? Your brother Matthew killed him with a sword in Ethiopia. Your brother Mark, they drugged the streets of Alexandria. Your brother Luke, they hung him from an olive tree. That's your family. Your brother Peter, they crucified him upside down. And church history says his wife is right there with him. Andrew said, and we was crucified, I've long waited this long happy hour. Thomas killed in India by a spear. James, your brother James, they threw from the temple, and when his body hit the deck and he didn't die, they beat him and they stoned him. That's your bloodline. That's your family. You don't come from weak stuff. You come from strength, and you can carry hope even when it hurts. Courage is in your bloodline. I'm not asking you to have it. I'm asking you to take it. It's who you are. It's what you're made of. You have the capacity inside of you to do all the things they did. It's the same spirit inside of you, the same spirit in Paul. I didn't mean that as a rhetorical question. Is the same spirit in you, the same spirit in Paul? Is the same spirit in you, the same spirit in Peter? Is the same spirit in you, the same one that raised Jesus Christ from the dead? Then why should we be surprised by our present sufferings? We come from a bloodline of people who simply do not quit. And we bring hope even when it hurts. There's only one way they could shut up your big brother Paul. There's only one way they could make him be quiet. They drug him out of that hole and they cut off his head. Because that's the only way they could silence him. And may the same be true for you. Until they put you 6 foot under and everyone eats potato salad, you're not done. I don't care if your hair is black because you're young or gray because you're old, you're not done. Your work is not done. In church, we have got to quit quitting. Our bloodline are full of people who bring hope when it hurts. That's who you are. That's what you're made of. I'm curious in this room tonight. Does that bloodline still exist in this room? Are there still men and women of courage in this room, willing to risk it all for the sake of hope and the gospel? I'm going to start with this. I'm going to ask 3 different things right now. Number 1, I'm going to talk to my favorite group in the room. If you're offended, you'll be all right. If you're not offended yet, you got thick skin. I want to talk to the 20s and teens because they're my favorite. It's what I've given my life to talking to. You guys in the younger generation, we need you. And I want to know if there's a young man or a young woman in this room that's willing to stand up right where you are and say that you will carry this baton, you will carry this kingdom, you will move it forward even when it hurts. Anybody in this room willing to stand up right where you are and say, that's me? Now I'm going to ask you another favor. To remember this moment, I'm going to ask you to come up here right now and grab a piece of this tape and wait right up here. Come on, get up here. I want to talk to you. Just come on up. I want to talk to you for a minute. If you've grown disillusioned with this generation, you're out of your ever-loving mind. Come on and pack it in. I want to talk to you. I promise you this. You carry in your body, in this treasure, in this jar, a treasure in this jar of clay. That's what you carry. You got a treasure in this jar of clay to show this all-surpassing power is from God and not from you. You may be hard-pressed, but you will not be crushed. You might be perplexed, but you will not be in despair. You might be struck down. You won't be abandoned. You might be persecuted. You will not be destroyed because you will carry in your bodies the death of Jesus so the life of Jesus can be revealed. And here's the honest truth. Though outwardly at times you're going to feel like you're wasting away, inwardly you're going to be renewed day by day. For your light and momentary troubles are going to reveal in you an eternal glory that far outweighs it all. So fix your eyes, not on what is seen. You fix your eyes on what is unseen. Because what's seen is temporary, what is unseen is eternal. And I promise you this. I will finish this race and I'll meet you on the other side. And we will get this work done together and we will persevere. Because you're a generation, and I know you will carry hope when it hurts. You have that capacity. I've seen it in you. I need you to hang tight for a second because I need a favor. I want to talk to another group of you. And if you don't have enough tape, you can reach up, take it off my shoes, but a little awkward up here. I want to talk to another group in the room. There's some tape. You guys can grab tape off the ground. I want you to take one. You put that in your Bible. You put that in your vehicle. You put that in your mirror. You put this somewhere to remind you of the commitment you made tonight. That until they put you 6 foot under, you're not done. That you will quit quitting, and you're committed to this kingdom, and you're committed to taking the gospel forward. That's who you are. That's your bloodline. You understand? I'll see you on the other side. I won't quit. I'm in this until the day they put me under. Okay? I won't quit. But I want to talk to another group in the room. And this is going to be a little more challenging. If you are an elder in a church, or perhaps you are in senior leadership in a church, I want to have just an honest conversation directly with you. Now, I'm going to specifically say the North American church because I'm not knowledgeable enough to know if this weakness exists in the Latino context, if it exists in the Asian context. I don't know. But I know it's an issue within the North American church. And so if you're an elder or senior leader in the North American church, I want you to stand up right now where you are because I want to talk to you directly right now. You and I are going to have a quick little conversation. Okay? We're going to have a heart-to-heart right now. And listen, my beard is gray enough that I've just stopped caring, okay? I'm old enough now, okay? I've been doing this long enough. I've been to this brotherhood long enough that I can have direct conversations, okay? Man to man, man to woman. We can do that, right? Been around, okay? I've been around long enough. We're going to have a hard conversation. Do you know that I can't find a single church in the nation right now that makes raising up Timothy's a metric they measure? Can't find a church anywhere that says we've got a target of how many Timothys we want to measure. We know how many we're going to raise up. Can't find a church that does that. Not one church I've talked to says we prioritize raising Timothys to the point that we pray daily that God will give us 5, He'll give us 10, and we're praying for it consistently. I'm asking you to go home as elders and to reprioritize the production of Timothys out of your local congregations, to make it a priority at an eldership level, at a senior leadership level, to say raising up Timothys matters to our church enough that we'll be on our knees and we'll pray about it. We won't just delegate it to our youth ministries. We'll be their greatest champions. We'll be their greatest advocates. We're going to get in the trenches with them and encourage them, equip them and help them and champion and support them. But church, it is time that you make raising up Timothys a priority in your local congregation. We have a deficit. And look, the issue is not with response. The issue is with follow-up. Look at this. They'll do it if you just talk to them. This is not where the problem lies. When's the last time your eldership went to your knees to pray for Timothys? When's the last time you begged God to help you raise up the next pastors? We're committed at CIY to raising up 30,000 pastors in the next 7 years, and man, do we need help. We can't do it. You have to do it. We have to make the production of Timothys a priority in our brotherhood again. They'll respond, won't they? If you're willing to do that, and take that home to your senior leaders, take that home to your elderships and make it a point of prayer. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. I'm asking you to grab a piece of tape and take it home and talk about it. So students, here's what I need from you right now. In this room, we got a lot of adults. Some of them have been through some hard times. Been a hard ministry season for them. Some of them might be thinking about quitting. Some of them might be thinking about walking away. And I want something to happen right now. I got a whole backpack full of duct tape. And I want you guys to get in groups of 2 and 3. However it takes. I only got 50 rolls, so figure it out. Somebody want the first one? There you go. That's yours. I want you, kind of yours. It's now hers because you missed the catch. I want you guys to get in groups of 2 or 3, and this is what I want you to do. You guys can sit back down. Sorry, senior leaders, my bad. I want you guys to move up and down these aisles. And I want you to meet these adults in a point of ministry right now. Get in 4 or 5, however you need to do it. Just make sure you get in a group, okay? Get with somebody else, even if you don't know them. I'm going to open up this backpack. It's full of duct tape, man. It weighs like 60 pounds. About broke my back. And here's what I want to happen. Careful, don't get hit in the head. I want you to grab a roll of duct tape, get in groups of 4 or 5, and I want you up and down the aisles all the way front to back. And adults, I want you to do something here. Number one, if you need to be reminded that you come from a stock of people who don't quit, I want you to walk up, adults, and I want you to look them right in the eye and say, I won't quit, you don't quit. I'll see you on the other side. Okay? You walk up, you look them in the eye, and you say, I won't quit, you don't quit, I'll see you on the other side. And we're gonna have a moment of ministry. You pray over them. You pray for one another. But I want you to take this duct tape home. I want you to put it on your car. I want you to put it on your Bible. I want you to put it on your mirror. Wherever it is, someplace that your stone of remembrance, that you remember that you come from a bloodline of people that don't quit, people that are willing to carry hope, even when it hurts. And when you're hard pressed on every side, you're not crushed. When you're perplexed, you're not in despair because you know you carry the life of Jesus. So the death of Jesus can be revealed through you. Students, move all the way up and down the aisles. Go ahead, start heading out, grab some duct tape and go. Adults, I'm going to encourage you, man, if you need to be prayed over, let these students pray over you. If you want to pray over them as a point of encouragement, pray over them. But I'm going to encourage you to grab a piece of duct tape and remind yourself of your bloodline. We can take hope to the nations when we remember who we are. Pain is part of our story. Hardship is something we endure, but we will do the work of an evangelist.